Čusbus, hlásím se z AFO, z rozhovoru, který vznikl při Academia Film Olomouc 57 a jsem tady s Monikou Koperskou, která je polskou popularizátorkou a zároveň chemičkou a budeme se bavit teda anglicky, ale bez budou titulky, takže dnešní rozhovor o popularizaci vědy primárně bude mít mezinárodní přesah. So, hi, I would like to, well, we have probably been welcomed in Olomouc already. I've been here for a couple of days, and you have been lecturing mostly about how to communicate science properly. If I understood that right.
I mean, properly. I don't know if there is like an equation to follow, but there are some tips and tricks you can adapt, and some things they come from my experience or from the experience of my friends. So I'm trying to,
so let's say
propagate the good flow.
So let's say I'm a scientist, and what's the single most important tip for me to communicate my science properly?
I think what comes out to be like the base on which to build on is to remember, kind of realize that science communication is a two-way street. It's not that I often ask students and scientists to draw a scheme of how they imagine science communication should look like, and it's usually the scientist, and the arrow is towards the public, right? Whereas what I would want everyone to realize that it's the arrows they go both ways. But it's rarely we see that, right? So in order to achieve that is to kind of don't have the situation where the scientist is feeling superior to the public. They should kind of level up and try to speak about their experiences. The questions are as much valid as the answers, and learn from each other. And I believe it's achievable. I have seen examples like that in UK, for example, where BBC is doing a competition asking people to phone in and give you some questions, and then scientists are solving those questions. So it's like, and they're legitimately like cool pieces of science, right? That they're working on, and there is citizen science that is becoming more and more popular throughout Europe. When you can be a part of a scientific project, so you can change your phone to be a detector of cosmic energy. We have a project like that in Poland. Or I seen that lately there was a project where you could take photos of clouds in kind of because all the like ESA or NASA has only the clouds from above, so you give them information from below, and they can work out things about climate change and stuff like that. So so the involvement of public, of people is crucially important, and I think that it has to be realized by the scientists, but by the public as well, that they can be a part of science through science communication.
Well, but that might work. But what if I am communicating not some mysterious science about cosmic rays or DNA? What if I'm communicating science about vaccines, and not all questions are, let's say, welcoming in that aspect?
You mean that people don't believe, or they undermine the research, or they question the research? Let's take it apart. Questioning is good. Science broadens the horizon of knowledge because it's questioning stuff, and we have a lot of examples of situations when you didn't question, and the science got stuck in one place, or the progress was prolonged because someone just didn't agree with the questioning. So I do think that we need to question That's super okay. And actually I prefer that to believing in everything, because then we have the problems of fake news that's spread throughout internet like 8 times quicker than the real news, right? So I do like questioning. I think that rational thinking is the base of understanding and building society based on knowledge, and it's also beautiful. So if a person questions, I think they should be encouraged to question even more. Is there, it's what we can do as scientists is help them arrive to some conclusions that are not flawed by fake news. And because questioning is okay, but distinguishing between fake news and real news might be, you know, not there yet. So it's a question of getting more tools to see the red flags of fake news, and to see red flags of research being done, you know, badly or not. For example, the research has been done on a small group of people, or, you know, the data was manipulated or something like that. I mean, there might be lots of things, or it has been published somewhere, you know, on a web page, not in a journal. You know, there can be so many things that's. I mean, if someone wrote a book, it doesn't make him a professor, right? And there's so many books. If someone has a web page, it doesn't make him an influencer. You know what I mean? It's like there's so I think questioning is good. I think that we should encourage that in the society. I think just that we should teach people more tools how to use the questioning to arrive at conclusions that are not, you know, misleading.
Okay. Let's reverse the question. Was it the single most problematic thing that some science communicators might do when they are communicating science?
What is the biggest problem? Or
what is the biggest problem in your opinion, and what's the biggest mistake? Or they might not even see it as mistake.
Well, yeah. Yeah, okay. So for me, I don't know if the biggest is like, let's not like grade them. We're not at school anymore, right? So, but some of the mistakes that can happen is we treat. Okay, so I think that time is very valuable. So if people are giving us their time to listen to us, that's a huge value. So what I'm always having in the back of my head is to return the value in some kind of other value. So it's like a bargain that we're, you know, doing, the exchange of values, let's say. So in order to achieve exchange of values, I think that we should respect each other's time. And scientists should not just give, you know, not just explain the science behind something. Okay, that's super for the curiosity of it's food for brain in a sense. But if there is anything that people can apply in their own life, you know, that they can take home, that is great to include. I think that little tips and tricks that can help you solve little things, you know, during the day, or anything. I think that's the huge value that is for the public, and scientists often forget about that. And what I mean is that I think that because they're so used to the academic way of thinking, they just think that if they explain what kind of place that was not explained or described before in science that they're feeling, that's okay, that's enough. Well, it's not enough for the public. It's cool when they, where science communicators start in a space that is common experience, you know, that is relatable to the public, that the public can understand. And then they explain the science behind that. And at the end, they give like advices that people can take home. And a construction like that makes the information even easier to propagate later, because a good science communication starts with a scientist, but then it's this society that keeps it, you know, rolling through the public. So if you construct something that it's easy then to, you know, oh, I heard great thing, you can do this and that at home, and it's going to be super useful for you. Oh, thank you, that's really useful. You know, that makes sense. So I think that scientists, when they often don't include the perspective of the society and of what the society can benefit from listening to them.
Isn't it depending on the field that we are communicating about? Like, it would be easier to give tips if I'm a medical scientist, and it would be a little bit more complicated if I'm a particle physicist or something like that. Do you think it is possible to find applications in every field or in some sort of?
Okay, so if they're doing basic science, the applications are going to be really hard to find. But then you can have metaphors. I mean, Feynman was great at, you know, explaining us stuff that was really hard to grasp, and he kind of made art out of it. So yes, I think that if you don't have the applications, then you should start with something that is so that is, in a sense, you know, getting a good metaphor and comparison to something that's really difficult, and finding that and you know, kind of constructing that for the public is a value itself. So there is a value in, you know, even the basic science can be explained simply, and that's the value. I mean, yeah, I see a value in that, yeah.
So far we have been talking about communicating science to people who are willing or unwilling to listen to science, to scientists. But isn't that necessary? Isn't science communication to some degree necessarily some sort of echo chamber, that we are just talking about science who are already listening to science? Is there a way to talk to people who aren't that much interesting? They might not even be haters. They are just not very much interested in science.
Good question. I think it's equally important as the fact how to make the information that you give to the ones that are interested kind of stick to them. So it's not just, you know, oh, that's cool, and then I forget about it. You know, it's yeah. I think there's a lot of challenges that we still have. One of the ways I think that we can, you know, because okay, the target group might be in a way limited, but then this target group is in the surrounding. So as I told you, that if they start propagating the information, it kind of the target groups gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So in a way, we can just, you know, the people who are so interested in science, they can be another scientific communicators, and I especially distinguish between the science communicators and scientific communicators, right? Because the non-experts who communicate science, that they also, you know, have a role in science communication. It's just, you know, they're just not experts, but still the curiosity and the fun and like all the good emotions that they are there. When it comes to, there's another thing about, you know, broadening this circle of people who are actually listening, and I think it's I don't know how to resolve that. I'll tell you what I mean. Because the media is giving us some content. So the other thing I wanted to explain you guys is that I think that, okay, so the media gives us some kind of content, right? And we take this content, and then we have some expectations to what the media is going to give us. And it's a kind of closed circle, vicious circle, kind of that's going round and round. And what's happening, for example, when I'm producing content for television, is that they're expecting for it to be simple enough for public to understand, because otherwise they're not going to be interested. And it's like, oh, we know what the public wants. And I'm like, do you really, like, when was the last time you talk to them, because when you go and give lectures or you have like science fairs or whatever, you meet people, I mean, that you usually wouldn't talk to, and still they talk to you and it's engaging and stuff and so on. So I am looking for a way to break this vicious circle of media being in a very broad sense. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking in a very broad sense of media being convinced that people are not interested in anything more complicated, outside of the books a little bit. I mean, maybe not so relatable. I mean, space is not relatable. We don't live. I mean, we live among stars, but you know what I mean. It's kind of it's a big perspective from us to there, and it can be engaging, right? So I think that the way to break that vicious circle would be great to grasp, because then we would broaden the amount of people that are interested in science, because in a sense I think that people might not be interested in scientific content because they're used to some fashion of science communication, or they think in a way maybe it's not so engaging, it's boring. They see all the time the same kind of schemes, the same kind of color palette when they see DNA in viruses, like we saw so much of lately, and they have the same idea. This might be something that they just don't like, and I think that ways to break the scheme that we've closed the science communication in would be great. I think that here at AFO you can see a few films done by Sandbox movies, and they really go out of the way of trying to find a new narrative of how to communicate science through films. And I think it's a great direction, and I'm hopeful. Hope being that the theme of the festival, and I'm hopeful that we have propositions like that, because I think that with propositions like that, with the larger variety of ways to science communicate, we are going to attract more people, and more people is going to see value in science communication. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask more like less general question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that when I'm communicating scientific information, new study, some sort of interesting fact, is it better to start with a relatable story that is just some sort of parable to information, or is it better to start with just straight facts and maybe show some sort of application or parable later? Like, interesting. Is it better to start with straightforward beginning, or is it better to just start with story that is only tangentially related to the facts?
So you're asking me, thank you for the question, and you're asking me about the merits, the facts, the information in let's say a talk, right? We're giving a talk. So you're asking me about the facts, the information. And I want to make you realize that on the other side, you have the emotions, the experience, the feelings that you're provoking in people. So in order to answer the question about the facts, you would need to think, what type of emotions do you want to awake in your audience, and what is there, what should come after what. So in a sense, I won't answer you like what is the formula for a good presentation or whatever, because it depends how you want to construct it, the whole thing. But you must see the two sides of it. So this side we call the thinking get. Like you get the information, you're in a sense, it's hard to say educated, because science communication is not education, but you kind of get informed, right? But on the other hand, it's the feeling get that we must not forget about, that you need to construct as well. And this is so important for people who, the mixture of the two, and the balance of the two gives you a good presentation. Okay, so no formula for you, but just an idea to realize that there is two sides to the presentation that we need to take into account. And I love the border of the border, what's happening at AFO, and the fact that science can be depicted in motion pictures, you know, the audiovisual. I love how the two kind of give us the thinking get the science and the feeling gets, so the audiovisual, the music, the fact that you're in a cinema, you know, you're with other people, you can talk about it afterwards. It's an experience that you're getting, especially here at AFO. That's why I so love coming back here every time that I can. Yeah. So I think, you know, that what's happening here is a good example of, you know, the two, the thinking get and the feeling get, you know, being put to a level that is really satisfying, and I really think it's a good example of, you know, constructing any kind of, you know, narrative. Mm-hmm.
And now for the last question, you have been yourself, apart from talking about science communication, you have been involved in conservation chemistry, yes, I think. So now, if you would show us how you would communicate what are you doing in science in like 3 minutes or some other sort of famous format.
I can do it quicker. Well, yes, usually I use the example of paper. So if you have any books at home that have these like yellowed, the pages are a little bit yellow, they smell in a certain way, right? And they just they break very, very easily. Yeah, do you have books like that?
Yeah, the old paper.
Yeah,
like,
the old paper.
Archives.
Yeah. So this is acidic paper that it's really interesting because when we started making so much of it, I mean, the paper, the demand was so big, we started putting acid in there. It was just because we needed to glue the paper. Not many people know, I mean, you do know, when you have the toilet paper, you cannot write on it with ink or with something like that, because
you can, but it's not going to work.
It's not efficient, right?
Yeah.
It's you need to make really big letters in order to make them readable. So we glue paper, so put a layer of something that was going to repel water, so anything that's water based is not going to go like deeply into the paper. So the in order to achieve that on a big scale, we started gluing the paper in the paper pulp. And we needed an agent that would allow us to glue the paper to paper. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but still. And this little agent had like this acidic compound in it, and this acid, I mean, people did not realize in like 1850s that it's going to be a problem. But after 100 years, we realized that, oh my God, half of the books are gone because of the acid. So what's happening is that when you've got the long chains of cellulose, they naturally break by oxygen, by water. I mean, the reactions are happening all the time there. But if you have if you have the acid, it accelerates both the oxidation and the hydrolysis. So much that it's getting older much faster. So that's why we have those books that they smell funny because of okay, so what you can do in order to rescue them, in a sense, prolong their life, if they're in more or less good state still, you can deacify them. And I think the closest clinic that can allow you to deacify your own personal books, I think it's in Krakow, because Krakow is quite near Olomouc.
Yeah.
So there is like a price range per kilogram. You can just send books there and, you know, get them deacidified. And the other thing is that you can just, because the smell that we were talking about, the smell also contains acidic compound. So it's good to liberate the smell from the books from time to time, so to kind of ventilate them. So read them from time to time. Yeah. Just reading. So reading books actually save books.
So that's a very nice ending of the interview.
Yeah, I think so.
Reading books is not good just for you, but for the books as well.
For the books as well, for sure.
Okay,
for sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
And your information. and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you. It was nice to have a talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.